I'm pleased to be here with you guys today. The Charlotte area is the home of just about every NASCAR team. We have one that's about an hour away, but you're within about 30 minutes drive of just about every team that's right here in the area. I'm looking around to make sure we don't have any Hendrick or Penske spies in the group. So y'all looking pretty good. You got the mask on, so you can hide pretty easily. But yeah, so we're going to get started. I currently hold two positions right now with Joe Gibbs Racing. On the marketing side and sales side, I'm the technical sponsorship and marketing director. And then we've launched a few new companies within the organization, and so I'm the managing director for Joe Gibbs Manufacturing Solutions now. Now, how many people have no idea anything about NASCAR? It's okay, raise your hand. All right, perfect. So this presentation is for y'all because I'm gonna take you from the very beginning all the way through the entire series. We're going to talk about, Xfinity Series, ARCA Series, Cup, what all that is, and then actually what it takes to build a race car and what do we do with that. So let's get started. All right, so NASCAR started back in 1947. You wouldn't believe this, but it was created mainly from moonshiners. Whenever they would have events, like at local fairs, things like that, the moonshiners already had their cars souped up. They outrun the law. So obviously they'd come down out of the foothills of North Carolina mountains and enter these races, and they already had a competitive advantage because back then all the tracks were dirt to begin with, right? And that's what they were used to doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about NASCAR, who Joe Gibbs is, and then we're going to talk about the war room.
It is the biggest stage in all of stock car racing.
It's the biggest day of the entire NASCAR season.
The only thing higher than the temperature is the pressure.
You win a race here, it's heard all around the world.
With 101,000 fans in the stands, a full infield, the suites are packed.
This may be the biggest crowd I've seen here in quite some time.
So we're helping control things we can control and adapt to things that we can't. Have a great day on pit road. Let's get some momentum this weekend.
Drivers, start your engines!
Try to dot all the I's, cross all the T's. No mistake. Be focused and execute.
It's showtime!
Ready. Still go. Green.
Oh, and everybody! Denny Hamlin wins his second Daytona 500.
This one's for JD. We're desperately going to miss him. His legacy still lives on.
Checker flag, 200, bud. Good job. All I do is win, no matter what.
Side by side.
What a idiot.
Through the grass.
Short track win number 1 for Martin Truex.
These guys are racing their hearts out.
What a hard tumble for Kyle Larson.
Georgia boy wins at Talladega.
Nice work, guys. Way to never give up.
He did it! His first ever checkered flag.
This is going to be a celebration for the ages.
Kyle Busch rides his brother. Busch will win easily. The most dramatic finish here ever.
Chase Elliott picks up the win.
Gave him an ass whipping today.
Denny Hamlin is not going to make this easy. Aaron Jones wins at Darlington.
Celebration is on for Christopher Bell.
They're wrecking on the bottom. 3, 4, 5 trucks involved. The wait is over for Stuart Friesen. It's time to start the playoffs.
16 drivers with a chance at the championship.
Facts victories for this 19 hot rod team. Come on.
Elliott noses into the tire barriers.
I can't believe I just did that.
Here comes Elliott, trying to make the move to the outside.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Kyle Larson wins at the Monster Mile and over.
Marvin gets third. He'll nail Logano. Major crash.
Ryan Blaney by inches.
Everyone fighting for every position.
It's insane. I mean, everybody's on 10.5, and there's only 10 settings.
Kevin Harvick wins in Texas.
Across the line goes Denny Hamlin.
They are going to Miami with a walk-off win here.
This is the biggest moment for the championship for
Crafton wins his third Truck Series championship.
Tyler Reddick winning back-to-back championships. Green flag is in the air.
A fast race car, impeccably driven, and no mistakes tonight.
Kyle Busch scores championship number 2.
It's all about this group, though.
an awesome moment. It's a dream come true.
So I'm not going to read this word for word, but after World War II, America really experienced their greatest growth in stock car racing. The problem is the tracks weren't talking to each other. They weren't sanctioned. So some of the tracks were better at the racing and not so good the crowds. Some could do both the same. But regardless of the venue, NASCAR racing, just stock car racing itself, just wasn't united as far as the sanctioning body goes. So in 1947, Bill France had a meeting there in Daytona, and after the meeting, NASCAR was born, which stands for National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. The first race ever for NASCAR was there on the Daytona Beach, was part of it. There was about 60 cars show up, about 50 ran the race. Red Byron was the first winner ever. There was about 14,000 fans there. They all paid about $2.50 a piece. Kind of like the way it is today, right? They're proud of those tickets. So plans immediately were made when the popularity of the sport took off. So in 1950 was the first ever asphalt race. Was there in Darlington, South Carolina, and the thing just took off from there. So through the 60s and the 70s, through innovation and technology, the NASCAR series really gained momentum. And then in 1979, the first ever fully televised race took place at the Daytona 500. And that's what launched the sport pretty much. All right, as far as NASCAR itself today, we're either the number 1 or number 2 sport each and every week. Now, having an owner that is an NFL legend kind of ties you into the number 1 and number 2 sport every single weekend. You can see the social numbers there and the views on the internet. It's the most loyal fan base on the face of the earth. I mean, these people are fanatics. And then you can kind of see some of our fan base demographics there. All right, now, back in the day, this was a NASCAR garage. All right, you had a couple cars, you souped them up, you went out to the tracks, and that's what it was all about. But over the years, it's kind of changed a little. So today, Joe Gibbs Racing is about 600 employees. That's about 400,000 square foot of race shop. And we have about 14 teams under the roof. It was started back in 1991 by Hall of Fame legend Joe Gibbs. Joe has 3 Super Bowl wins over his career with the Washington Redskins. He was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in '96. And out of his 16-year career, he made the playoffs 10 years. He is in the top 100 all-time NFL Hall of Famers. There's only 10 coaches in that group, so it makes him in the top 10 coaches of all time. So in 2020, Joe was given the Bill France Award of Excellence. He had just won his 5th championship with Kyle Busch. And then he was invited over here at Charlotte at the Hall of Fame. I know y'all are going to be going to that Wednesday night. So there they have a venue, and Joe was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So he is in the class of 2020. Makes him one of the only people I know that went into different sports and is in both Hall of Fames. I asked Joe one time, I said, you've never driven a car, you never kicked a field goal, but you're in both Hall of Fames, right? And his comment was, he said, you surround yourself with the right people and they'll make you famous. So that's his claim to fame. He just picks out the right folks.
He is the first inductee in both the NASCAR and Pro Football Halls of Fame. But for Joe Gibbs, the fact that he achieved success isn't what drew him to this moment. It's that he brought so many people to the pinnacle of their success. Like his 3 Super Bowl wins with 3 different quarterbacks and 5 NASCAR Cup titles with 3 different drivers. The depth of Coach's impact stands apart from most who don a headset. Across 3 decades in coaching, and now 3 decades in motorsports, the numbers and statistics are purely superficial. You don't win nearly 200 games on trick plays and gimmicks. You don't capture more than 175 checkered flags gambling on fuel. Chance isn't what collects 5 Brickyard 400s and 3 Daytona 500s.
Dale Jann's going to win the Daytona 500!
The chapter and verse of Coach Gibbs' story is a truth far richer. What Coach achieved on the starting grid and on the gridiron mirrors his daily walk as a disciple of Jesus Christ. Where Coach excels is challenging his teams to live with purpose so they might compete with passion.
Ever since I was a kid, I dreamt of this, man. Yes!
To claim their God-given character so they can run their race with honor. Points, poles, purses all mean nothing without divine purpose.
JD's name is on that car. That's his number 11 with Denny. JD had the best view of everything.
The trophies he's collected are impressive. The accolades, all hard-earned. The titles, almost too many to count. But let me tell you which titles mean the most. Disciple, husband, father, friend. That's the man we know as Coach.
He's the one that should be here talking. The man's had a radio and a headset on for 60 years. All the football games, all the races. It's amazing. All right, so let's meet our teams real quick. So obviously Joe's the owner. In the number 11 FedEx Toyota Camry, we have Mr. Denny Hamlin. His claim to fame, he has won the Daytona 500 3 times. He's made the playoffs 6 times. Kyle Busch drives our number 18 car, which the Morris family sponsors that with the M&M's brand. Kyle's won 2 championships and 4 Brickyards, which is pretty amazing. The number 19 car, sponsor is Bass Pro Shop. It's driven by Martin Truex Jr. Martin won the championship, I think 3 years ago. And then we got a rookie out of the Xfinity Series, driving the number 20 car. I think he's in his early 20s, Christopher Bell. And that's our 4 Cup drivers. Now, our series is just like baseball. So the Cup Series would be the same as the major leagues. So we also have what would be the AAA and single A. So we call this our Xfinity Series. And that's where our development drivers are getting seat time and developing their skill set. So in it, we have in the 19 car, Brandon Jones. And then we have Mr. Burton, Harrison Burton. And he's in the 20 car. Dex is the sponsor there. And then we got this kiddo here that's coming up out of the ARCA series. This is Joe's grandson, Ty Gibbs. And he will win the ARCA series championship this year. ARCA is a single level, which would be the same as, like I said, single A baseball. And then you work your way from ARCA to Xfinity, Xfinity to Cup. So he will win the ARCA series championship this year. And he's already been put into a handful of Xfinity races already, where you can see he brought home the checkered flag about 4 or 5 times this year already. All right, one thing is the pit crew. So I always say they're not the lead singer, but they're in the band. So what we do is we go after college athletes or ex-pro athletes to put them in these pit crews. So we put them in an NFL style weight room. We have 6 trainers. 3 of them are strength trainers, practice choreographing their moves out on pit road. We have a mock pit road that I'll show you. And then 3 of them are sports medicine. So a lot of times if you got a shoulder, a back, a knee injury, we can get you back out on the track quicker by doing all your rehab there at the facility. So at any point in time, there's about 100 individuals training on a daily basis. So just like this morning, 1/3 will be up in the weight room doing their weights and cardio. 1/3 will be out on the football field and basketball field here doing exercises. And then the other third, we have 2 pit cars there that we practice pit stops. So we have an outside awning. We film all the stops for instant review. And then one thing that we're able to do is we're able to videotape all 4 teams, and we can do a translucive on top of each team. So if team A is so much faster than team C, we can sit there and show each pit crew member where they're losing time by the faster teams. So this is kind of what that would look like. One team's wearing white helmets, the other team's wearing dark helmets. So every move, every turn, how they pivot, like I said, it's a choreograph is what it is. So we're able to do 4 tires and 22 gallons of fuel in about 12 seconds. Now, if you think about it, you're hitting 5 lug nuts, you're pulling a tire off, you're putting another one on, you're hitting 5 more, you're getting up, running around to the other side of the car and doing the same thing. So under race conditions, this is kind of what it would look like. Kind of gets you upset when you go get your tires changed on your car and it takes 2 hours, doesn't it? We know they can do better. All right, so I'm going to talk about the development process real quick. At Joe Gibbs Racing, we're half manufacturer and we're half competition. So we are a high-performance race car manufacturing complex. Once the product is finished, it is handed over to the competition side. They set it up for the specific racetrack that they're going to, and then they load it on haulers, tractor-trailer trucks, and we do 39 events per year. So we start in February, we end in November, and we only have, I think, 2 weekends off. So it's a very busy schedule, but it's definitely engineering and manufacturing driven. So right now we have about 77 engineers. They're broken down into different disciplines, which are aero, design, race team engineers, manufacturing, and vehicle development group. Right now there's over 2,000 different parts and pieces that we manufacture that go in the race car, the engines. If you think about it, shocks, anything that moves or anything it takes to assemble one of these cars, we manufacture it there in the building. Our part qualification, we do a lot of, obviously, simulation, CAE, do a lot of lab testing, and then racetrack testing. So where those 3 come together, we call the sweet spot, and that's what qualifies a lot of our parts and development. Because when a part goes wrong, it's a bad day. So this was Chicago. We about lost Bobby that day. This kind of shows you what some of our track testing would look like. A lot of our CAE and simulation. We really have perfected the digital twin, so we don't do as much on the track today. It's mainly done in the simulation room. We're able to do more airflow, more tandem. Like if we're at Daytona or Talladega, we can actually do tandem drafting. And then occasionally we will go back to a full body wind tunnel just to verify that the digital twin is calibrated correctly. We do a lot of testing internally with FEA and CFD. After all the testing, there's build sheets that are created. And so once that takes place, the designs and fixtures are created along with the NASCAR specs, and then a chassis is built. Now, once a chassis is built, we have to transport it to the NASCAR certification facility there in Concord. And what they do is they do a series of inspections on this, and then they put a series of RIFD tags on the car. After a car is assembled, it'd be difficult to check the internal working mechanisms of a car. So all the chassis are pre-certified before we're able to hang a body on the car. Now this is actually one of our Xfinity cars, but the point is, all the front clips is a Kevlar composite. All the side pieces is sheet metal, and then the hood and the trunk is a carbon fiber. After the pieces have been assembled, we put very little Bondo and paint in the car because we wanted as smooth as possible, but as light as possible. And then we shoot it with a white light system. This will get you within 1/1000th of an inch. We're able to create a body, 3D model, and then it's then taken into our inspection room, and it gives us a color map on where we're high and low. Long story short, all these cars are built within about 10 to 15,000ths of an inch. Once that's done, the old way, we would check it with what we call the claw, which is just a template that went down over the car. And today, we use a Hawkeye system, which is a 3D reverse engineering tool that we roll the car in. It shoots a series of dots down on the car, and then lasers shoot across the car, collect the dots, and it creates a 3D model of the car. Now, we're constantly trying to keep all the weight out of the top end of the car so we can redistribute the weight with tungsten racing blocks in the frame rail down below the center. So, like I said, we don't paint these cars anymore. About 6 or 7 years ago, we created a printing room upstairs, and we will create these latex wraps that will print out everything. So you wouldn't think about it, but a wrap's 5 pounds lighter than a paint job. Then all the decals that are on top of the wrap are all implemented in on the wrap, so there's not a second surface there that wind's having to go over. And then it takes the guys about 3 hours to wrap a car instead of 3 days to paint one and to decal one. So from a competitive edge, turn it around quicker, it's just a greater product. So this is what a wrap would look like. So for anybody that ever thought we had headlights on the car, yes, it's a decal, okay? All right, we're gonna talk real quickly where all the parts and pieces come from. So like I said before, over 2,000 pieces are built there in the shop. We've already built our chassis, now the mechanical parts and pieces start making their way to the car. The drivers sit in a big box of mush and create a body mold. All the seats are custom to the driver's body shape. Once all that starts taking place, the car starts coming to life. Right now we have CNC manufacturing there. We have about 40 different pieces of equipment. So there's 3 5-axes. There's about 14 verticals. There's about 4 or 5 horizontals. and then there's about 7 lathes. All in all, we have laser cutters, water jets, you name it, any way to shape a piece of metal, we can manufacture that piece. One quick example of why we do that, we can do quick turnaround times, but we invest more heavily into complex multi-axis type machines. So this one is a mill turn. We did a case study where the front drag link was 3 pieces, and this is an example of that. We were able to hold that part with a billet in between centers, machine that piece out of 1 instead of 3. So what it did was it took all the weld out of the part, because anytime you hit a part with a welder, it moves. So we were able to take it from 3 parts to 1, 15 hours to machine to 14, 18 hours to set up to 5. Long story short, we reduced the cost, sped up the time, and made a better part. So that's why we try to invest in more advanced pieces of equipment there to manufacture our parts. We also have a metrology lab there, so all these pieces of equipment reside on a separate piece of real estate, so there's no noise vibration that gets into the room. So all of our parts and pieces are checked in a clinically clean metrology environment. We have 3D printers there, so we do those for layups, for molds, and then actually some parts and pieces make their way to the car. We build our own batteries, so this would be a battery tray, be the front and back. And then we're actually lay our cells in that encapsulates the top and the bottom. And this is an example of a track bar adjustment gauge that we'll print out. We'll put our electronics in it, and it makes its way straight to the car. So all those parts and pieces are printed right there on the 3D printers, and then we're able to take advantage of that technology. The old way, you build a mold and have it injection molded, and it takes forever, and this way you can have your parts and pieces pretty much the next day. All right, so different tracks have different setups. We go from anywhere from a half-mile super speedway, which was this past weekend in Bristol, Tennessee. That's why I don't have any voice left right now. And then we go all the way up to super speedways like Daytona, Talladega, tracks like that. We'll be in Vegas this weekend, which is, I think, 1.5 miles. So different tracks have different setups as far as the camber in the front end and spring, shocks, that type of thing. So there's 4 setup plates here, 1 for each team. All these setup plates are Blanchard ground and calibrated twice a year. Each one of the cars are set on each plate with instrumentation and fixtures, and everything's laser aligned while on that plate. So once the cars are ready to be loaded, then we'll put them on our team hauler. Each team has their own truck that you get 2 cars in the very top of the truck, and then underneath is a shop away from home complete with an engineering suite up at the front. Well, in the front of the trailer part of it. These trucks will do about 75,000 miles per year. With our 39 events, we're in California twice, Texas twice, Phoenix twice. We're all over the place. So if you think about it too, is we prepare 2 cars per week, per team, per series. So that's 5 in our Cup Series because we do another team as well. We have 4 in our Xfinity Series and 1 in ARCA. So we have about 20 to 22 cars we're building and preparing every single week. You get 1 race out of 1 engine, okay? We build these engines for maximum horsepower for the liability of a 700-mile race. So I always say a perfect engine blows up on the way to victory lane, right? Because you won the race and that's the most you can get out of it. So that's how we transport the equipment, and then to transport the employees, Joe Gibbs Racing has its own aviation division, so we have 3 jets. These 2 here will move about 187 team members around each and every weekend. And then we have Joe's corporate jet that moves the executive team in just on race day. All right, so we're going to get into the war room. We'll try to explain this. If I lose anybody, you can ask questions afterwards. But so back at Joe Gibbs Racing, which is in the upper left, like I said, we got about 400,000 square feet. All right, so there's 3 different locations that we're going to take place here, but in the upper right is the inside of one of our haulers. At the end of that hallway, there is an engineering suite there, complete with a server room, 7 monitors, and 3 engineers that work there at any given time. So in the lower left is a piece of wireless equipment for measuring tire thickness. And all it is a wireless depth mic is what it is. In the lower right is a crew chief sitting on the pit box. So when you go to a racetrack, we bring out this big communication box called a pit box, and I got pictures of it, I'll show you. But during a race, we have a crew chief there, and it's his game. He's talking to the driver. We also have a spotter that there's on top of each track. Spotters stand up there, and if you're my driver, you can't see. You got a helmet, your helmet's restrained. There's 40 other drivers out there, and you're doing 200 miles an hour. So it's very difficult to look around your shoulder to see if there's a car there when you're ready to make a move. So we have spotters that stand up on top of the track during a race, and it's constant communication. There's a car high. That means you don't go up. They tell lap speeds. It's constant information that the spotter is giving to the driver. So the gentleman on the right is the crew chief. He can talk to the spotter, and he can talk to the driver at any time, and also his entire crew are all wearing radios and headsets. That's how, because all these races are very, very loud, so you got to be able to communicate to everybody what's taking place during a race. So everybody's got a radio, everybody's got a headset. All right, so these are our 4 cars. It was very difficult to get one picture with all 4 cars in the same picture. Because usually you got a guy running in the back and you got some guys running in the front. So this was at Daytona where all 4 are lined up pretty nicely together. And so all 4 cars are at the track. You got 3 engineers up on the pit box at the racetrack. You got 3 engineers back in Joe Gibbs Racing during the race in the war room. They're all communicating. So you got a tire specialist at the racetrack, and you got a tire specialist in the war room. So what takes place, we're just going to talk about tires. There's about 10 different scenarios I could have did today, but tire management is huge. If you got lousy tires, if you don't manage your tires, then you won't be able to compete during a race. So you can see the indentions. There's 2 indentions you can visually see right here. So what we do is we measure the tire thickness before they go in the car. When they come off of a car, this is a wireless depth mic that we're actually able to put that in each indention, and we can test our outside wear, we can test the inside wear, and then the 3 indentions in the center is the center zone, and we're able to calculate what our tire wear is, and at the end of the day, you're able to do air pressure adjustments that can or make you win or lose a race. So I took some videos the other night at Bristol. What happens is these tires get real gummy, so it's difficult to take a reading unless you got a nice, flat, smooth, common ground. So what you're going to see, a very small video is right there at the track. I took my phone out and took a few videos. Is the guys, they take a blowtorch and they take like a putty knife, and they'll heat up the tire and they'll scrape that gum off the tire and get it nice and flat before they come in and take their readings. So that's what you're going to see right here. And then here's another with the 2010. So they're physically scraping that gum off to be able to get a flat surface is what you're doing. So then the tire specialist comes along, and you see he's taking readings in each one of those indentions. There's 5 indentions. Every time he takes a reading, that data is being uploaded to our hauler that's there at the track. Okay? Everybody following me so far? All right, so when these readings are being taken, uploaded to the hauler at the track in the server room, there's 3 engineers there. They then translate that information back to the war room in Huntersville. So, and this is a picture of the hauler. Like I said, down at the end, you go up a series of steps, and that's where the engineering room is. The war room back in Huntersville is receiving that information. Calculations are being managed and made. Air pressure adjustments are being calculated. That information is then sent back to the engineering office there at the hauler. And then that person there has a headset and a radio that he then can communicate that information to the crew chief, which is sitting on the pit box and calling the race. At that point in time, you can see he's got a series of radios on him. He can talk to the spotter, he can talk to the driver, or he can talk to his entire pit crew. And he can go on the radio and say, hey, we need a half a pound out of the right front, or whatever. But all this information is being delivered to him through two sets of engineers at two different locations off of the readings that's being taken by a wireless piece of instrumentation. If you ever come to a race and you're a guest of ours, we have 8 seats on the back of the box. So you're given a headset and a radio. You're able to listen to the engineers plot the race, plan their strategy. We do give a disclaimer because you'll be able to hear what the drivers are saying too, and sometimes that's why we do the disclaimer. You get a little colorful. And then we obviously have guests there, so we give them radios and they're able to hear everything as well. So this is a picture. You can see the gentleman hanging over. He's got a headset on. Everybody on the pit crew has earbuds in their ear on top of their helmet with a radio in the back, and they're getting instructions from the crew chief during a race. And then when it all works out, this is what that would look like as well. Got to make a pit stop. All right, I got a ending video, and it's about 5 minutes, and I'm right on time. I got about 2 minutes on my time, so I'm going to skip that. In our last highlight reel, we won about 19 races in a championship, so it's about 6 minutes long, and I'm right on time right now. But I do have 1 or 2 minutes for questions. If anybody, and don't ask me radio questions. That's but anything dealing with the race team, what it would take to run a race team, anything you'd always want to know about a race team but was afraid to ask, right now would be a good time. Yes, sir. We invented all the competitive advantages, and then everybody copies after that. No, actually, whenever they did decals, when I started, I've been here 25 years. That's what qualifies me to be with y'all today. I was there when we had 18 employees, and that's all you knew how to do was paint a car and put decals on it. But through years and through technology, wraps weren't around back then. So things evolve. Technologically advances has given us competitive edges over the years. I purchased our first CNC machine, our second one. Today we have 40. I was the first engineer. Now we got 77. So it's really evolved over the years to technologies like that. That was a good question. Yes, sir. Well, back in the day, it was a stock car. They literally, I was talking to Richard Petty one time, and his daddy Lee, raced in NASCAR as well. And he said he'd never forget, people make fun of him because they'd drive around in their family car because it had a number on it and a bunch of decals, and people make fun of them. And then a lot of times they would go to a race and Dad wrecked the family car in the race. So they all had to bum a ride to get home. So back in the day, another story, when we went to Darlington for the first time, they didn't realize how abrasive the track was because we're close to the coast. So it's real sandy and abrasive. So when a lot of fans went out to get in their cars to go home, they noticed a lot of their tires were missing because the guys were wearing down their tires in the race, and they just went out in the parking lot and helped themselves. So it was stock cars back then. Once again, innovation took off. There is nothing on those cars that's stock today. We do race a Toyota Camry, but good luck finding a Camry piece on that car. Yeah. That's a great question as well. Yes, sir. Yeah, so the question is, do we funnel these, when we find out competitive things, do we funnel it back? So inside Joe Gibbs Racing, we have 8 TRD engineers, Toyota Racing Development. So they work closely with our engine department. They work closely with air, wind tunnel, all that stuff. You got different disciplines of TRD engineers embedded at Joe Gibbs Racing. So it's a great partnership with those folks, and what they learn being a part of our race team, they then translate back to the TRD folks. Yep. Great question as well. Anybody else? Anybody on this side? Everybody good? All right, well, I wish everybody safe travels back to everywhere you traveling home to. I really appreciate y'all having me today. I hope you learned something. I hope this brings a little bit more insight to when you go to the Hall of Fame on Wednesday night, and just thanks for having me. Hope you have a good conference. Thank you.